It's time to get controversial. These are all the books that I will not be reading, even if they make the Booker Prize 2023, and all the reasons why not. Hey guys, it's Charlotte, welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to be running you through the books that I will not be reading for the Booker. And the first one I'm starting with is In Ascension. I know, shock, horror, I can hear the gasps through the screen already as I say this. This book will find its readership. I'm just not that person. I have tried this book and the first 2/3 are very science heavy and less character and plot heavy, and I just find that very difficult to wade through and stay engaged with. In general, I'm fine with scientific exploration in a novel, but not when it's at the cost of character and plot, which in my mind is what storytelling is all about. You cannot sacrifice character and you cannot sacrifice plot. The tone of the novel and the characterization both feel very flat to me. I didn't connect to the character at all. I DNF'd this book. So whilst other reviewers have said that it does accelerate in that final third, I personally don't think you can justify a novel by saying, oh, we'll just wade through the first 2/3 to get to the good bit. No, I want the entire novel to be the good bit, and I don't want to waste the first 200 pages forcing myself through a novel to get to a kind of juicy, delicious, character-based plot. The next one that I will not be reading if it gets onto the Booker Prize 2023 is To Battersea Park. Now, I don't know why anybody would want to read or write even about the COVID pandemic. Wasn't it bad enough the first time round? Why do we have to relive this? Why do we want to write about this? I certainly don't want to read about it. And so this is centred in that COVID pandemic nothingness, and I just don't want to go back there. It's kind of over, gone, not going back, and I certainly don't want to be picking up a novel that's all it's about. The next book on this Hall of Shame that I will not be picking up for the Booker is Lucy by the Sea, and the only reason for this is that it's the fourth in a series. I'm not reading the fourth in a series for the Booker Prize. Now we're getting serious, and the next book I'm not reading because I started reading it and I did not like what I saw. So this is My Name is Iris, and I was perturbed, to say the least, by the references to the female body within the first 15 pages of the novel. The author manages to show a total ignorance of the female body, from orgasm to pregnancy to postpartum to childbirth, that it actually came across as disrespectful in the sheer level of misunderstanding that this man clearly has for these topics. I understand that you can't necessarily always write from a place of experience. He's a man, you know, for start, but this almost seemed just so disrespectful in its portrayal of what is a gorgeous, beautiful, capable, strong female body, and he takes all of the negative aspects, he seems, that he can get his hands on, and just totally goes in on it. And thinking, what? So if you are a young woman, and from the analytics on my channel, the vast majority of the people who watch my channel are young women, please give this a wide berth, pardon the pun. This is not for you. Go and read something that is body positive and is a demonstration of all the beautiful, wonderful, magical things about your body. Not this. The next book that I will probably not be reading if it gets onto the Booker is The Passenger by Cormac McCarthy. I know. Again, I can hear the gasps, but this is this just goes beyond my capacity as a reader right now. I acknowledge that I'm a very young reader. I've probably been reading for about 4 years now, and when I mean reading fairly excessively on a normal human being, right? So 100 books a year. I've done that pretty consistently now for about 4 years, and this is the only year that I have lowered that. So I am a new reader in that I know people who have been reading 100 books a year for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, right? So this is why I consider myself to be a bit of a novice reader. I am also about 60 years, give or take, younger than Cormac McCarthy when he wrote this book. And so for me, he is grappling with existential ideas of life and death. Is God real? And they are just not the questions that I am even thinking about really, to the same extent as he is, as a man who is, almost 90 years old, and that is very confronting. Death is on the doorstep in that sense, and this book is a manifestation of those deeper levels of inquiry into the bounds of life and death. Why are we here? Is God real? Where am I going next? And I just feel I would value and appreciate this so much more if I didn't read this summer, and if I left it 50 years. The next book that I will not be reading if it makes it onto the Book of 2023 Longlist is Biography of X by Catherine Lacey. I've tried both of Catherine Lacey's books now. I DNF'd Pew and I DNF'd Biography of X when I tried it a couple of months ago. I don't know what it is. Her as an author, I just don't seem to be able to gel with, and I don't quite understand, because I do initially like her premises. I liked the premise of Pew, I liked the premise of Biography of X. I kind of dived into both books really enjoying the story, but as it kind of time went along, it's definitely the execution that lacks for me. She takes what is a very interesting premise and almost makes it boring to the point where I want to walk away, and I do walk away. In Biography of X, we quickly learn that Charlotte, the protagonist, has been conned into some form of emotional version of Stockholm Syndrome after she uses the entire novel to justify her wife's abusive and narcissistic behaviour. This next book, called A Spell of Good Things, I want to talk about in conjunction with Biography of X, because there is a similar reason as to why I will not be picking up A Spell of Good Things should it be longlisted this year, and this is because Adebayo's plots are too disturbing and too brutal for me. She discusses abuse against women, violence against women, very predominantly in her books, and that is something that I find difficult to read about, and I cover it alongside Biography of X because this is again abuse of women. It's a female perpetrator in Biography of X against a female victim, and then in A Spell of Good Things it is the male perpetrator against the female victim. And I just find sometimes as a woman it is difficult to be reading literary fiction that constantly deals with this violence and abuse towards a body that isn't dissimilar from your own, right? And it's difficult to read about those sorts of things. It's a bit like how anybody who identifies any which way, and you read something that is a person like you being abused, and abuse of women is very, I think, predominant in a lot of literary fiction, and so I try and avoid it when that's the only thing the book is talking about. It's hard for my soul to take that level of violence against women, especially as I read for pleasure and enjoyment. It's just hard to deal with. Same reason why many different identities and ethnicities and sexualities don't read certain novels, because they show elements of that experience that are either unsavoury or offensive, or they'd rather just not look at, almost kind of like a trauma porn type of scenario. I would rather not look at women being abused if I can possibly help it, and so not picking up Adebayo, not picking up My Name is Iris, not picking up Biography of X. The reasons are all pretty similar, and it's all very protectionist on my part, and defending kind of my mind against that almost. The next book on this Booker Wrong list is A History of Burning. Now this one I've tried, and it jumps timeline perspective and character perspective, both of which are things that usually work for me, but in this case it's just badly handled, and if you're going to use these writing devices, use them well. This one is not. You move on too quickly, which means you never connect to the character you're currently with, which is a huge flaw in a book, because character-based plot, you have to connect to a character in order to move forward in the plot. It is an essential part of storytelling. It's a component that conveys the meaning of what we're discussing here, why we're here. I DNF'd it, but other reviewers have said that it picks up after the 75% mark. But again, like in Ascension, we are not wading through 2/3 of a book 3/4 of a book before we actually get to the good part, right? That's not acceptable for me. And so yeah, the idea that the only redeeming feature of this book is that it gets better in the final quarter is a no thank you. So the next book that I have tried and DNF'd is I Have Some Questions for You. My issues, plural, with this book are that you could lose about 200 pages and you wouldn't lose anything in terms of the plot and the character. This is also a very on-trend book. It's very trendy. There have been so many authors who have tried to replicate the magic of The Secret History over the years, from creating that New England environment, the private school environment, the teenage angst. But there have been very few authors that have actually managed to achieve it, if any. This novel does not have a place within that literary canon of dark academia, New England, private school vibes. And overall it's very skin deep and lacks all the nuance that it so desperately needed. The next book that I will not be reading is On the Savage Side. I think if the content warnings for a book are a paragraph long, that's probably a good indication for me not to read it. If you enjoyed A Little Life, I think you're going to like this book, because all the reviews are saying that it's just so similar and that it's trauma porn all the way. I try to avoid voyeurism and trauma porn in my novels because I think often it can be insensitive and disrespectful. So I wanted to kind of make this slightly more lighthearted and read you out some of the reviews because they made me laugh. First one says, "This was so messed up it made me feel sick." Second one says, "Lacked nuance and verged on torture porn." Third one says, "Pretentious and overwritten." Fourth one says, "Trauma porn for the sake of being trauma porn." So need I say more? This is for fans of A Little Life, just not for me. I mean, I imagine it's going to be along the similar lines of violence against women, because this is about young women going missing, and I believe their bodies wash up in a river, although don't quote me on that one. The next book that I will not be reading, even if it makes it onto Booker 2023, is The Vaster Wilds by Lauren Groff. This book has two strikes against it for me as a reader. The first is that it's told by a child narrator. I do not typically get on with child narrators. And the second strike is that it's predominantly dealing with colonialism. And I read a lot of literary fiction. At this point, I'm kind of swimming to the back teeth of colonialism as a general theme. I feel like it's not been done to death, but it really is going up there in terms of how oversaturated I feel in terms of anti-colonial literature. That's not to say that it's not good. I mean, I read a lot of colonial in theme literature because it often has an absolutely brilliant storyline. But yeah, I just feel like really, and especially the child narrator is the thing that's really throwing me off, because I actively try and avoid that. The next book that I will not be reading, even if it's nominated for the Booker 2023 long list, is In Memory of Animals by Claire Fuller. I absolutely adored, loved, and put it onto my best books list of the year, her Unsettled Ground. But this is not the same talent that wrote Unsettled Ground. This is bland, this is boring. The quality of the dialogue just reflected the quality of the overall book itself, in that it was pretty bad. The characters all came across as whiny, basic, downright insufferable a lot of the time. You don't want your protagonist to be someone that annoys you more than you can relate to. And overall, this was so mediocre that I feel like it's not even really a threat for the Booker 2023 long list. So yeah, I feel on steady ground that I will not have to look at this one on the Booker long list this year. So the next one I'm going to talk about is Crook Manifesto. This is by Colson Whitehead, and I've read both his books before, and I'm putting this on this list because neither of his books really wowed me. The Underground Railroad I rated 4 stars, and The Nickel Boys I rated 3 stars. They were fine. Am I excited that he has a new release coming out? No. Would I read it if it wasn't eligible for the Booker? No, I would kind of probably actively avoid it. And so, you know, why am I reading a book just because it gets onto the Booker long list? Because after 2 3 to 4 star books, I just don't expect good things from him anymore. So that is all the books on my Booker wrong list for 2023. I hope you guys had fun with this, and let me know down in the comments below the books that you will not be reading, even if they make the Booker long list 2023. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to give this video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe to my channel for more Booker 2023 content, and I will chat to you all about books and Booker in the comments down below. Bye guys!